Showers and again some hail and sleet is possible, but for much of tomorrow, most of southern Britain, eastern Britain, dry and fine with sunny spells. It's the north and west where we'll keep those wintry showers going. Again, a pretty chilly feeling day, 3 or 4 at best. Add on that breeze and it feels colder than that. So just a reminder, we do have Met Office yellow warnings in place for the next couple of days for snow and ice. See the Met Office website for more details.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News, and you're listening to us on the radio as well. It's me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Muroki. It's just gone 10 a.m, and we're here today with all of those top stories from Tony Blair's knighthood to the anniversary of the Capitol riots.
Yes, we'll even be chatting about vegan baby bells, can you believe? And could it be true? Well, we'll tell you very shortly. There's also been a big cat sighting in Britain. We've got all of that and much, much more coming up. And remember, get in touch with your views. As usual, we'd love to hear from you at GBViews at gbnews.uk, and we'll read those out through the show. But first, let's give you the latest news.
I'm Rosie Wright. A very good morning. Let's get you up to date at 10 o'clock. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has suggested plans to raise national insurance will go ahead despite calls to scrap the move. The Commons leader, Jacob Rees-Mogg, argues the increase can't be justified as families struggle with surging food and energy costs. From April, national insurance is planned to rise by 1.25%. The policy was announced in September to help the NHS during the pandemic and to fund the cost of social care.
We think it's absolutely right that we do two things. One, clear up the very big backlog of operations and procedures that haven't been able to take place because the NHS has been so remarkably dealing with coronavirus. And two, make sure that we deal with the long-term problem of social care, and we're doing it through a rise in national insurance. That's the decision that we've made. We think we're making an important historic point here.
A complaint by a gay rights activist in Northern Ireland has been ruled inadmissible by the European Court of Human Rights. Gareth Lee claimed he was discriminated against when the Christian owners of a bakery refused to make him a cake with the slogan "Support Gay Marriage" in 2014. The court says he failed to exhaust domestic remedies in his case, and its decision is final. The director of the Evangelical Alliance, Peter Linus, told GB News the ruling was more about freedom of choice.
It comes down to, can you force somebody against their political, religious, conscience, for any reason, can you force somebody to print a message they disagree with? And the court said, no, you can't. For anybody, you can't force anybody against their will. And the European Court has now agreed with that. And I think that's ultimately a good decision, actually, for everybody. It's never been about Christians against the LGBT community.
Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers are seeking a retrial after a juror told the media he was a victim of sexual abuse. Well, they say his disclosures influenced the deliberations and convinced other members of the jury to convict Maxwell after some initial doubts of her accusers. She was found guilty of grooming underage girls to be abused by Jeffrey Epstein last week. Novak Djokovic's bid to have his visa cancellation overturned will be heard in an Australian court on Monday. The Serbian tennis player, who's hoping to defend his Grand Slam title, was told by board officials he didn't meet entry rules and will be deported. The country's Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, says proof of exemption wasn't valid.
Rules are rules, and there are no special cases. Rules are rules. It's what I said to you yesterday. That's the policy of the government. Entry with a visa requires double vaccination or a medical exemption. I'm advised that such an exemption was not in place, and as a result, he is subject to the same rule as anyone else.
President Joe Biden is expected to tell Americans on the anniversary of the deadly Capitol riot that his predecessor, Donald Trump, carries singular responsibility for the attack. 4 people died on January the 6th of last year, and 1 Capitol police officer died the day after defending Congress. The former strategic advisor to Donald Trump, Sebastian Gorka, told GB News that Trump will run for office again.
He's running, I can assure you of that. He will be running, and God willing, if we can stop election fraud, he'll be back in the White House for 2024. You're going to see the same old man who came here to break China in the swamp and to fix the swamp. The swamp is full of swamp creatures, of vested interests, of lobby groups. He came here to drain it of those vested interests and to represent Americans. So no, I don't think Donald Trump is changing in his 70s.
North Korea claims it successfully fired a hypersonic missile which precisely hit its target 430 miles away. Yesterday's launch was the second test since October as the country works to bolster its military capabilities. Hypersonic weapons, they're harder to detect, usually flying at lower altitudes than ballistic missiles, and they can achieve a pace of more than 5 times the speed of sound. The 1921 census has been released, which has revealed an insight into the life at Windsor Castle at the time. King George V's handwritten entry shows he was joined at the time by more than 200 other people, including his wife, Queen Mary, and 4 of his 6 children. Over 150 people are listed as servants, and there were 40 visitors, including King Alfonso XIII of Spain. It is 5 minutes past 10. You're right up to date here on GB News. I'll have the latest headlines for you in half an hour. Right now, back to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. And we're here until midday again with the day's big stories and our opinions and great guests as well. So here's what's coming up.
Yes, well, does Tony Blair deserve a knighthood? Well, almost 765,000 people seem to think not. They've signed a petition calling on the government to block the former PM from receiving the most senior Order of Chivalry. We'll just be discussing how this saga is likely to turn out for Blair.
Yes, and it's 1 year on since the Capitol riots in Washington, D.C., and President Biden is set to mark the occasion with Congress and is also expected to deliver some damning words blaming President Donald Trump for the carnage. But with Trump expected to run for president again in 2024, will Biden's condemnation only cement support for the former president? We'll be speaking to our guests to find out.
We will indeed. Now, some charities are warning that families could face energy bills of £1,200 this year as the price of energy skyrockets. Labour is calling for the 5% VAT rate on bills to be scrapped to ease this burden on families. We'll be giving you the latest as the nation takes a punch in the pocket.
That's all coming up for you and much more as well across the programme. As usual, you can get in touch with your views, GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be reading those out, of course, over the next couple of hours. But first, Patrick gives his views on Tony Blair's knighthood.
Tony Blair had a single shred of decency, he'd hand his knighthood back. But of course, he doesn't. More than 750,000 people have signed the petition to have Blair stripped of his knighthood. But we all know this won't have any impact on Sir Tony, because, after all, 1 million people took part in an anti-Iraq war march, and that didn't stop him dragging us into that mess, did it? What is Blair's legacy? As I see it, Iraq is a pretty good place to start. The Chilcot report is absolutely damning. In a nutshell, it says that Blair didn't tell the truth on Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, on his deal with George Bush, or the risks of future fallout from the conflict. There have been more than 1 million excess deaths as a result of Blair's push for war in Iraq. Many of them civilians, many of them children. 179 British troops died in Iraq, and I'm just going to quote now the mothers of some of the young men who died in that needless war. Rose Gentle is the mother, Gordon Gentle, a 19-year-old from Pollock who was killed in 2004 by a roadside bomb. She said, "Instead of standing in front of the Queen, being made a sir with that stupid grin on his face, he'd be better going to the cemetery and standing in front of my son's grave to see what he's done." I'm inclined to believe Rose on that one. And it's not just Iraq, is it? It's Afghanistan as well. Hazel Hunt, whose son Richard sadly died over there, is thinking of sending back the Elizabeth Cross that her family received as a mark of protest against Blair's knighthood. Another military mother, Caroline Whitaker, who lost her son Gareth after he was shot dead by an Afghan police officer in 2012, said that she felt the establishment was making a mockery of hers and other children's deaths. And I think that's what Blair's knighthood does, really. I think it washes his hands clean. Well, not quite. I mean, there's not enough soap in the world for that, in my opinion. But Blair's legacy is more than just unwinnable wars and plunging the Middle East into a never-ending death spiral that has increased the risk of terror attacks both at home and abroad. There's, of course, the secret deals with the IRA as well, isn't there? Under the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, more than 500 convicted terrorists were released early, and nearly 200 IRA members on the run were given letters of comfort, saying that they wouldn't be pursued. Meanwhile, of course, veteran Dennis Hutchins was hounded to death by being dragged before a court in Northern Ireland to account for his actions during the Troubles, some 50 years previous. But let's look even closer to home, shall we? Immigration. Blair made a conscious decision to irreversibly change Britain's demographics. In 2004, 8 countries in Central and Eastern Europe, including Poland and Hungary, joined the EU as part of the bloc's enlargement project. Blair chose not to put a block on the amount of people who could come. And for the decade that followed, net migration to the UK from these new member states topped 423,000. Asylum seekers were also reportedly waved through as economic migrants. Blair really set the ball rolling on mass migration, and entire communities, entire cities have changed forever. And then, of course, there's education, education, education. He wanted 50% of people to go to university, and that happened, meaning loads of people now saddle themselves with a lifetime of debt in the pursuit of a Mickey Mouse degree from a bang-average university, and employers now demand degrees for jobs that simply don't require them. He signed off on devolution because, of course, he wanted to end the question of independence once and for all. That went well, Tony. He's kind of like the ultimate champagne socialist, isn't he? The Pandora Papers, apparently, revealed that Tony and Cherie Blair did not have to pay £312,000 in stamp duty when buying a £6.4 million London townhouse. The couple bought an offshore firm that apparently owned the building. That's obviously according to reports. And the Telegraph also reported that the Blair Institute made millions by advising Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince, the man widely believed to have ordered a journalist to be carved up with a bone saw in a Turkish embassy. The effects of Tony Blair's premiership are still being felt right across the UK. The blood of those who died is splattered across the Middle East. The education system will never be the same again. Neither will Britain's demographics. Now, in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, the only way that he should be getting down on bended knee in front of our Queen is to beg for forgiveness. Not a fan, massively, really.
Yeah, I gathered. I'm not scathing about Blair necessarily, as you are. I wouldn't put my issues with him in such strong terms, but I completely understand, and actually our viewers have been getting in all week, haven't they, telling us that they absolutely don't think that he should be getting this knighthood. Other people think he should, but he also did do some admirable things, and I don't think it's entirely right to blame him for Afghanistan or the fact that the EU ate. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of these things were sort of beyond his control, and I think at the crux of the argument against him getting this knighthood is his decisions around the Iraq war, isn't it? And that's the big one for so many people, given that it is quite a big mistake that he made there. But he did do some incredible things as well, introducing a national minimum wage. Yes, the 50-50, the sort of 50% target for universities. Yeah. Probably in retrospect wasn't ideal, but you know, so many people who were the first to go to university because of his push for education might think differently. So, you know, it's not all bad, I would say, necessarily.
Well, look, a lot of you have been getting in touch just quickly. I mean, it's fair to say a range of views. And John's been in touch. I don't want to defend Blair particularly, but we have to remember Saddam Hussein had killed thousands of Iraqi civilians. Yeah, absolutely. Certainly not saying that Hussein was pretty good either. But yeah, lots of you have well been getting in touch, just saying, I agree with you. I'm disgusted by the idea of him getting out. That's from Pauline. But I believe that we're going to be joined by someone else who potentially, anyway, going to be putting the other side of Blair's knighthood to the nation.
Yes, Peter Edwards is the former editor of the Labour List, which is a pro-Labour news website, which is independent, however, of the Labour Party. Peter, thanks for joining us this morning. Obviously, a very hot topic at the moment. You've had Patrick, I'm assuming, put his views across on this. You're obviously a pro-Labour man, and Blair is one of the longest-serving Labour Prime Minister, actually. So what are your views on him? Do you think he should be getting this knighthood for his leadership over the years?
Well, I'd be quite happy to abolish the system of knighthood and dames altogether, but it is what we have, both for rewarding people who work in their community and figures of national political significance. So with that in mind, I don't think it's wrong that Blair gets a knighthood. And I did disagree with an awful lot of Patrick's monologue. I think you have to look at what Prime Ministers do in the round, and clearly Iraq is a word, and Afghanistan also the word that keeps coming up. One has to be sensitive when talking about this, and remember, for anyone who's lost a loved one in war, they face a daily grief that never goes away. And I think everyone in politics should remember that. But I also think someone like Tony Blair is very conscious of that, and he seems content to be criticised and challenged, and he will be for the rest of his life over the decision on Iraq. But we had 3 public inquiries. None of them found he lied. And then before you just go on, before you come in, when you go on to his domestic legacy, national minimum wage, who's against that?
There are
peace in Northern Ireland, who's against that? And so on.
Well, there are elements of it. Look, I absolutely take a lot of what you said on board there. But for me, I think it's a question of at least the perception of deception, right? The weapons of mass destruction thing is not great, right? That's not great. And I refuse to believe that Tony Blair was as adamant as he made out, that he knew that there were weapons of mass destruction there and that we had to go in. I don't believe that he was as adamant as he made out about that. He did do these deals with these letters of comfort with the people in Northern Ireland, the IRA, basically, and that wasn't exactly made public, was it? In fact, by definition, they were secret. There are also serious question marks about the numbers when he was talking about immigration, about what he wanted the public to see, the numbers that he was bandying about with regards to that. This guy doesn't really look like he enjoys telling the public the truth, does he?
Oh, Patrick, I think that is nonsense. And I actually think what you're saying is so partial and unbalanced.
Well, balance it for me. Balance it for me. You know, go on. Was he up front with the secret letters that did the deals with the IRA? It wasn't, was it? It was secret.
Peace in Northern Ireland has endured for more than 20 years. The Good Friday Agreement, you know, you can read it online, be poured over, and then talk about Iraq. So we've had 3 public inquiries: Hutton inquiry, Butler inquiry, Chilcot inquiry. How many of them found he lied? 0. I think people are entitled to disagree with Iraq, and I would. I mean, historians are going to call Iraq a disaster, and sadly, I've got a lot of sympathy for that point of view. But I think what Blair accepts is that we can argue about it and debate, but the suggestion that he just lied to the public has never been stood up.
I'm not saying that he lied to the public about weapons of mass destruction.
But he did win elections after doing each of those things that you opposed.
No, I think that I'm not saying necessarily that he lied. That's a question of personal judgment. And you're right, OK, fair enough. But maybe they haven't come out and said that he was absolutely out and out lie. But I feel like that's a bit of a technicality, really. I don't believe for a single second that he was as adamant, was he? He could have possibly been as adamant about the weapons of mass destruction thing as he let on to the public. I mean, he'd already messaged George Bush, hadn't he? Weeks before to say, I will back you no matter what. So he'd made his mind up.
Well, I think, the phrase you're referring, and this is perhaps one for the historians, to a letter or a message he sent to George Bush that the former ambassador, Christopher Mayer, then picked up in his diaries. And I think the phrase was something like, we'll be with you come what may. But one can read that. That's not necessarily a commitment to an invasion. And frankly, we could debate that for half an hour, but we won't know what the intention of that was. But to zoom out to the big picture, has there been any evidence produced that Tony Blair lied? No, there hasn't. Has there been a lot of very distressing and unpleasant evidence about all the unforeseen consequences of Iraq? Of course. And I think every Prime Minister has learned really painful, salutary lessons, apart, of course, again, from the families who lost loved ones. But you have to look at Blair's legacy in the round. He changed his party, he changed the country, and he won elections after all the things that you have just been criticising him for.
Oh, well, I appreciate you putting up the good fight. That's part of what we are about here at GB News, obviously. It can't just be a one-stop shop, as it were.
Thank you for joining us, Peter Edwards, there, former editor of the Labour List News website. Look, in the inbox, there is a lot of support for you, overwhelmingly, but there's somebody here saying...
you've dug out the one.
Tal Christie's Blair was the best PM of the last 50 years. So, overwhelmingly, people do agree with you, but there are still some people out there who think Blair was a great PM, quite frankly.
I mean, he was a winner, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he won 3 elections, indeed. So that he had a lot of immense support at the time, that's for sure. But keep your views coming in. And after the break, MPs, of course, returned to Westminster yesterday after the Christmas break. But what is on their agenda for this year? We'll run you through all you need to know in just a few moments. But first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. A cold one out there today. A wet day for most as well. Rain for the majority, but there is some snow falling over the hills across northern England and Scotland, courtesy of a deep area of low pressure just to the west of Iceland. These weather fronts bringing the moisture, hitting the cold air. It was a frosty start for most of us this morning. And as that wet weather hits the cold air, we will see a continued risk of snow, certainly for the next few hours over the higher routes through the Pennines, across the southern uplands and into the mountains of Scotland further north. There will be some snow on the higher routes, so say the A9, for example. Not lasting too long, but not very pleasant travelling out there. A wet day for most, but staying largely dry across East Anglia and the southeast until this evening. Feeling pretty cold out there, even though later on temperatures could get up to 8 or 9 across the southwest. The rain reaches East Anglia and the southeast before scooting away through the evening, and then showers come into the northwest. Again, mostly rain at low levels, but some heavy snow is likely over relatively small hills across the northwestern quarter of the UK, and likely to be quite icy as well as temperatures drop close to freezing in towns and cities, a little below in rural areas. But still a potential for heavy snow showers and ice across western Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England in the morning. So just something to be aware of. Some travel disruption certainly possible here. Rain mostly across Wales and southwest England, but some snow mixed in here for a time as well. Again, chiefly over the hills. Some sunny spells on Friday, but temperatures back closer to just 3 or 4 Celsius for most of us and feeling colder with the wind, and certainly when the showers come along. Staying pretty showery during Friday evening, so again, as temperatures drop sharply, we could see some icy conditions for a time. And then out west, we've got another set of weather fronts which will bring most places a wet spell during Saturday with some strong winds. Sunday does look drier and brighter at this stage.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Yes, morning everyone. It is now 10:23 a.m. This is, of course, Patrick Christie's and Mercy Muroki on GB News. We're live on your TV and very much live on your radio as well.
Yes, indeed. And we all know, don't we, that yesterday members of Parliament returned to Westminster following the Christmas recess and the management of COVID, including Plan B, alongside, of course, spiralling energy prices and the increased cost of living dominated Prime Minister's questions.
Well, Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, faced the Prime Minister after Labour leader Keir Starmer tested positive. Sorry, I shouldn't really laugh. Tested positive for coronavirus. The only reason I'm laughing is because he's done it again. Is it this guy's?
How many times? 6 times he's self-isolated.
Yeah, he's been off for something like 56 days or something like that.
That's quite staggering, given that the number of actual days of Parliament sitting in Parliament. So that is a quite substantial chunk of time, isn't it?
It's a lot of time. Well, anyway, Matthew Lesh joins us now, the head of public policy at the Institute for Economic Affairs, which is, of course, a free market think tank. Thank you very much, Matthew. Now, 2022 has already been dubbed the year of the big squeeze. Of course, many people will be wondering how it's going to all affect them. Just talk us through what people can expect on this front.
I think there's a lot of pressure on cost of living, and a kind of return of the economy is a central part of debate. We've got inflation way above expectation at around 5%. That could go up a little bit further. And then at the same time, you're going to see the Bank of England most likely raise interest rates, which could have an impact on people's mortgages. At the same time, we're expecting some quite substantial increases in the costs of energy, that the price cap has fundamentally failed as a policy. It's resulted in many energy companies going bust, and it's going to have to increase because the cost of electricity has increased. And on top of that, the fact that we've also got this big jump in national insurance as well. So within a couple of months, we're going to see just the average person, their quality of life much lower, particularly with respect to their incomes. And we're not seeing the kind of income increases that you would expect necessary to compensate for the inflation we're seeing, and certainly not for the extra taxes people are going to be saying. So there will be a big squeeze on incomes, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in our politics. I think we already see Angela Rayner trying to push Boris Johnson on that point, and fair enough as well. You know, if partly because of the government's responsibility, partly because of things out of their control, people's quality of life is going down. That's a big political issue.
And yeah, you're right. Angela Rayner, of course, yesterday, she reiterated Labour's position that the government should cut that 5% VAT on energy to at least ease some of the pressures. But as you mentioned there, wages aren't sort of keeping up with inflation. People are facing rising fuel costs, rising gas bills. is there any analysis at the moment about how much poorer the poorest people in this country are set to be over the next year, or as a result of everything that's happening?
Look, you're certainly talking about hundreds of pounds here between the national insurance increase. We've got both the 1.25% on the employer side and the employee side. Of the average person, that's going to be £200-300 a year. Plus, we don't exactly know how much the energy price cap is going to go up, but that's probably another few £100 there. I've seen some estimates of well over £1,000 in total once you add on inflation in terms of extra costs. But what I think we also need to think about here is, what is the plan for growth in the longer run? We're seeing an increasing size of the state. That means a smaller private sector as a result, and that's going to have longer term impacts on our productivity, on level of investment. We've got corporate taxes, which are also going up. Obviously, that's not directly going to hit people in the same way, but in the longer run, that is going to have a big impact on productivity, on investment, on innovation, on all the kind of things that boost our living standards. So the overall picture is not particularly bright when it comes to a lot of those fiscal matters. I think the government needs to seriously consider. It was interesting to see some reports this morning about Jacob Rees-Mogg bringing up national insurance increases and issue in cabinet yesterday. There seems to be a lot of disquiet, if not within cabinet, certainly within Tory backbenchers, about the government's role with respect to the cost of living issues people are going to be facing.
Yeah, how long do you think public goodwill is going to last with all of this? We are getting pummeled in the pocket, aren't we? And actually, at some point, people might say, enough's enough now.
Yeah, I mean, people vote Tories with, I suppose, the general expectation that taxes aren't going to go up. And the national insurance increase was fundamentally a broken manifesto promise. And the governments can make all the excuses they want. They're going to say it's necessary for social care. They're going to say it's necessary for the NHS. But it really undermines the trust that people have if they don't think they can vote Conservative and get lower taxes. I think it's a big risk for Boris and it's a big risk for the Conservatives that, well, if in the end, if you're going to get high taxes under Tories, you're going to get high taxes under Labour, you may as well vote for the people who are going to promise you everything, and at least you know that they're being truthful about what they say when it comes to taxes. And just generally in the polls at the moment, Boris is not doing particularly strongly, and that's putting him in a much weaker position. I don't think Boris is going anywhere. I think he's a cat with 9 lives. He can survive almost any political catastrophe that is thrown upon him. But all these things adding up together, and people seeing their quality of life not going up, is going to have a big impact.
Yeah, indeed. And finally, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything at all to look forward to in terms of sort of public policy and what people can expect this year from the government?
Yeah, but that's a good question. I think there's a lot of potential. I mean, we've got the Australia-UK trade deal has been signed, and that'll come into force probably around midway through the year once it goes through parliamentary process. I think that's going to boost trade, and it's going to be the first sign of some of the Brexit benefits that we have. You've got the government looking to reform some of the rules when it comes to GM foods, or particularly gene editing, and that's going to be a good economic boost. Despite Lord Frost's exit, I think there is still a lot of interest within the government about what they can do to deal with all the red tape and regulations that we've imported from the EU and reassess what is necessary. Because ultimately, if you can boost innovation, you can and boost Britain's ability to make things, to create things, to increase incomes, to be a creative country. If you can do that without the kind of restraints that the EU often put on some of that innovation, you can be a much wealthier country. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for the government there. It's just about whether or not they choose to grasp them and take it forward.
Matthew, thank you very much. Matthew Lash there, of course, of the Institute of Economic Affairs, whizzing you through essentially exactly why and how we're being punched in the pocket. It doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon. I thought he batted that one off relatively well, by the way, there. Have we got anything to look forward to? Because, of course, the answer's no. Anyway, GB Views at gbnews.uk. Let's get these views coming in.
There does seem to be a lot of support for the monologue you gave. Not long ago, you were very scathing, weren't you, about Blair and whether he should be given a knighthood. Of course, you don't think he should be given a knighthood. Lots of people saying thank you for reminding us of the long list of things, the very many reasons. Avis says here why he should never be awarded this honour.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's a shame sometimes you wish you had a bit longer with people, really, because Peter Edwards did come on of Labour list, and fair play to him for coming on and backing the idea that he believes, anyway, that Tony Blair should be knighted. I think if I'd have a bit longer with him, I would have liked to have asked him a bit more about what Blair's kind of current dealings, really, and the Blair Institute, getting involved with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. How does that square with a man with deep morals and principles as well, personally. But alas, we were out of time.
Yeah, well, we'd like to hear actually from anybody who did agree with our guests, who said, hang on, so there's misconceptions around Blair and some misinformation thrown around about his role in the Iraq War and what those inquiries did find. We had a viewer earlier in messaging saying he was the best Prime Minister of the last 50 years. Maybe some of you do think, actually, given everything else, his whole policy agenda, he was a very admirable Prime Minister.
Well, we've had... there's no name on this one. Oh, Gareth, there you go, Gareth, thank you very much. He said, Gareth is echoing, really, what a lot of people are, which is, he took us to war on the basis of weapons of mass destruction, which were never found. And, I mean, that's a massive issue, isn't it? That's a massive, massive problem. And the question marks over whether or not he knew that going in, of course. But, yes, there we go. Keep those views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Will you be signing that petition? Have you been signing that petition? Do you actually think this is nonsense and Tony Blair should be knighted? Knight him twice. Let us know what you think.
Yes, well, after the break, it's been a year since protesters stormed the US Capitol in Washington, D.C. after the election of President Joe Biden. 5 were left dead following the major incident, with some political commentators naming the event as the darkest day in American democracy. Well, we'll be getting right into that with an American journalist and the chairman of Overseas Republicans. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date with the latest headlines. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has suggested plans to raise national insurance will go ahead, despite calls to scrap the move. The Commons leader, Jacob Rees-Mogg, argues the increase can't be justified as families struggle with surging food and energy costs. From April, national insurance will rise by 1.25% to fund the NHS and social care. A complaint by a gay rights activist in Northern Ireland has been ruled inadmissible by the European Court of Human Rights. Gareth Lee claimed he was discriminated against when the Christian owners of a bakery refused to make him a cake with the slogan "Support Gay Marriage" in 2014. The court's decision is final. Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers are seeking a retrial after a juror in the case told the media he was the victim of sexual abuse. The defence says his disclosures influenced the deliberations and convinced other members of the jury to convict Maxwell. She was found guilty of grooming underage girls to be abused by Jeffrey Epstein last week. North Korea claims it successfully fired a hypersonic missile which precisely hit its target 430 miles away. Yesterday's launch was the second test since October as the country works to bolster its military capabilities. Hypersonic weapons are harder to detect, usually flying at lower altitudes than ballistic missiles, and can achieve more than 5 times the speed of sound. Novak Djokovic's bid to have his visa cancellation overturned will be heard in an Australian court on Monday. The Serbian tennis player, who's hoping to defend his Grand Slam title, was told by border officials he didn't meet entry rules and will be deported. You are up to date. It's 10:35 here on GB News. I'll have more for you at 11 o'clock.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. It's 10:37. I'm Patrick Christys. I'm joined, of course, as ever, by Mercy Muroki here on GB News, on your telly and on your radio.
Yes, indeed. Good morning. Well, the United States will today mark 1 year since the Capitol Hill riots. The world was stunned when supporters of Donald Trump stormed the US Capitol building, attempting to halt the formalisation of Joe Biden's win in the 2020 election. Well, our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, has more.
Some called it one of America's darkest days. Others saw it as a demonstration of US democracy. One protester shot dead, 138 officers injured as thousands of angry Donald Trump supporters tried to storm the heart of American democracy, the Capitol building. The authorities and the world taken completely by surprise, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of protesters. Their goal, to stop Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory. They were angry, they felt cheated, like Donald Trump, who spoke to them just 30 minutes before they breached police lines at the Capitol building.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
2 investigations are still ongoing. One by the FBI has so far charged more than 700 people. Another by a congressional committee made up of 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans has spoken to more than 250 people. They're trying to answer questions like how involved the White House was in organising the rallies. Did they know it would turn violent? And why did it take 2.5 hours for President Trump to tell his supporters to stop rioting?
We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel.
Most are cooperating with the congressional investigation, but a handful of those closest to Donald Trump are not, citing executive privilege.
The insurrection took place on November 3rd. That was Election Day, and before and after. That was, to me, the insurrection. And the January 6th was a protest. But if you would have looked at the crowds, the size, nobody wants to talk about that. I believe it was the biggest and most people, and I've spoken to very big crowds. I have never spoken in front of a crowd that size. Nobody ever talks about that. And then, unfortunately, some bad things happened, but also the other side had some very bad things happen.
A recent ABC Ipsos poll suggests 52% of Republican voters believe the rioters were actually protecting American democracy. While a Massachusetts University Amherst poll released just after Christmas suggests more than a third of Americans believe President Biden's victory was illegitimate. Expect to hear more of that when Donald Trump holds a rally in Arizona a week on Saturday instead of today's cancelled press conference. President Biden, meanwhile, will speak to the nation on a day Democrats are calling for reflection, remembrance and recommitment from the American people. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Well, joining us now is American journalist and managing editor at Modern Age Journal, Arthur Bloom, and Greg Swenson, who's the chairman of Republicans Overseas. Thank you both for being with us on this anniversary of those Capitol Hill riots. So I just want to start with you, Arthur, and ask you, what type of legacy do you think these events have 1 year on?
Well, I think it's still very much unwritten. We don't have a good picture of what went down at certain points of this event, we're still kind of looking at kind of the involvement of provocateurs and things like that. I would say the definitive history of January 6th has not yet been written.
Okay, all right, Greg, I'll throw it over to you. I mean, look, the question is, I suppose, whether or not Donald Trump incited some kind of violence. Do you think he did?
Well, there's no doubt he made some mistakes, and I think if he had a chance to do it over again, he might have done some things differently. But he surely, look, you saw in the clip that you played before the segment that that he did say, protest peacefully and patriotically, and I think that's something that's been mentioned before. I don't think the Democrats care whether that's the fact or not. I think they're just going to try to weaponize this thing and make, obviously they're leaning on it quite a bit with the first anniversary here, but I think they'll continue to lean on it into the midterms. But yeah, I think there's no doubt the president made some mistakes, but inciting an insurrection, absolutely not. And I think it would be better if there was some perspective and some balance. And I totally agree with Arthur that the story hasn't been written yet. We haven't even seen charges on most of the people that have been charged, and no one has been charged with insurrection under U.S. Code 2383.
Okay, well, Arthur, what do you make of the fact Joe Biden's obviously set to, I suppose commemorate might be the wrong word, but he's certainly set to mark this event with Congress later, and it's been reported he's set to deliver some words which will be very scathing towards Donald Trump. Do you think this is a mistake? Because a lot of people will be looking at that and saying, the more Joe Biden hates Trump, the more I love Trump almost. So it could actually garner more support for the president, the former president.
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely possible. This event, January 6th, is the incredible vanishing coup. First, it was an attempted coup, then it was an insurrection, now it's a riot, and it's probably going to diminish even further than that. But people like Joe Biden, people like the January 6th committee in Congress, which is a sham, by the way, there are basically no Republicans on it. There are technically two, but they're not really Republicans. They're going to wave the bloody shirt of January 6th till the cows come home. But there are a lot of Americans out there that don't really believe the story.
Well, I think fantastic you said there about it'll be a gathering next, won't it? Some kind. It'll be something like that. But Greg, yeah, I mean, look, do you think there's a lot of buyer's remorse now with Joe Biden? Do you think maybe a lot of those people who were deeply angry at what was initially a coup, an insurrection, are now looking at it and maybe going, actually, to be honest with you, I don't want Joe Biden in anyway?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely buyer's remorse. And a lot of those voters, especially independents, where he's polling, he's dropped, 20, 30 points with independents. It's been the biggest drop of any post-war president in terms of the change from election day until now. So, look, by creating this moral panic around January 6th, they stigmatized all Trump voters. And that's why it's a good point, that you brought up, that, this is just going to cause more people to reject Bidenomics, to reject the weaponization of January 6th, just like that they weaponized COVID. So there's all kinds of moving parts, but Patrick, absolutely, there's buyer's remorse. You can see the unbelievable drop in the polls, and also not just Biden overall and Kamala Harris overall, but also on just about every major issue that the polls are just dropping, and he's in the 20s and 30s on just about everything.
Yeah. Well, finally, I just want to put to you one last question, which is, if you had to put a figure on it, how likely do you think it is that President Trump, former President Trump, will run again in 2024? And if he does, that he would win? Arthur, let's start with you.
Gosh, I would be hesitant to put any kind of probability on there. I think he's going to, at least if he doesn't run, he's going to make it look like he's running very, very close to, the time when he has to make a decision. He's going to drag it out as long as possible because that's where his power comes from. His power over the party comes from the possibility that he might, come back in glory like that. And he's going to relish that, even if he's not actually going to follow through and run.
Okay, all right. Well, throw it over to you then, Greg. The percentage chance, I suppose, that Trump will have another pop at it and that he'll win.
Yeah, look, I think it's better than half that he will run again, and I don't think he'll run unless he knows he can win. But let me be clear: if the election was tomorrow, he would win. There is no doubt about it. Not only do I think he'd win the nomination, but again, if the election were tomorrow, he could easily beat Biden. I think Arthur and I could beat Joe Biden tomorrow. So that's not saying much, but I think I'm quite confident that he will either run or be a major influence on the election.
Absolutely. Now, look, both of you, thank you very much. Can I just stick with you, Greg? I know you're a very serious chap, so please, I hope this does not demean your stature whatsoever, but I can hear a dog in the background, and we are very much a dog-friendly station. Is there any chance we can have a quick look?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's down the hall. I'd have to open
Oh,
the door.
okay, fair enough.
It's Fred and Ginger, and this is my last week of working at home. I can't wait till it's over.
Okay, last question. What type of dog are we talking?
They're Cocker Spaniel Poodle combos. So, anyway, they're harmless, but they like to bark.
They like to bark, yes. You train them to go near Joe Biden, but there we go. Thank you very much, both of you, for taking the time. It was really, really great to have you on. I have to come back soon. Yes, Happy New Year. That was Greg Swenson, of course, chairman of Republicans Overseas, and Arthur Bloom as well of the Modern Age Journal.
Yes, really interesting there. Maybe the dog was getting very enthusiastic about the chance of Donald Trump
running. It was a peaceful march.
Yes, indeed.
Right. Anyway, as we've been discussing this morning, moving on. Charities apparently you're going to have to do that now, yeah? Charities are warning that some families could face bills of up to £1,200 this winter. I need to focus now, apparently. It's the latest example of our cost of living crisis. Yes, so one food bank, of course, definitely a shift in tone, in Kent, is trying to help the local community during this difficult time.
Yes, well, our reporter Ellie Costello has more on this.
We're talking about a really serious story today, but a very important story which affects us all, which is the cost of living. And the Independent Food Aid Network has said in recent figures that 90% of food banks in the UK have seen an increase in demand in recent weeks. And they also say 30% of food banks could struggle to feed everybody that needs their services. Well, today I'm at Gillingham Street Angels in Kent, and it's currently looking after about 10,000 local people a month. It's helping to keep them fed. So we're going to bring in Neil Charlick at this point. He's the owner of Gillingham Street Angels. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Have you seen this increase of people coming to the food bank?
In the last few months, it's about 1,000 a month. It's going up. So we're currently on about 10,000 people a month, and we're expecting those, once we do our figures, to increase even more.
And that's increased a lot, because you were once on about 1,000 people a month, and now you're on 10,000.
I started off as a man in a van doing a soup kitchen in a high street. COVID kind of sent the figures shocking through the roof. It's terrible what's kind of gone on. It's good that we can cope with the figures and we've been able to help people, but it's going up every single month.
It is amazing that you can help people, but why is this happening?
I think it's a lot of things. I think COVID was a massive impact on us. The £20 drop in the universal credit. I think the gas and electric prices rising. I think we're just constantly hit with bad news. So I think it's never really going to sort itself out. I just think we're going to carry on digging a hole for ourselves unless we get some good news soon.
And there is one story that has really stuck with me that you've told me today about a man that is really suffering and relies on you for help.
We get a lot of people come along to get food. They don't talk about other stuff. They want to chat. Sometimes these people don't get out. They don't get to see other people. This guy once, whilst having a chat with one of our workers, said that he has to take his curtains down when it's cold and wrap himself in his curtains. That just shouldn't be happening in this day and age. I mean, we've given the guy blankets and pillows and more stuff to keep him warm, but it's disgraceful. It's happening to people.
No, it's a really, really sad and shocking truth that somebody is having to take down their curtains to keep themselves warm in 2022 now. And Neil, you have a really remarkable story that I really want you to touch on. What inspires you to help people in the way that you do?
I was homeless myself, so when I moved to Kent, I started a very small, going out with a rucksack, just helping people and looking after the street homeless, and it just grew and grew, and I enjoy spending my time helping other people, and I'm very thankful I've got a good team now that are like-minded like me, that just want to help other people. I would recommend other people to go volunteer for charities and get involved. Help people. There's better things to do with your time than what some of us waste our time on now. Go out and help. Be nice.
Well, Neil, you are a very inspiring person, and thank you so much for talking to us today. Really do appreciate you talking to us at GB News. Well, the cost of living has risen by 5%, and that is the highest increase in the past 10 years. So a lot of families will be struggling this winter. And looking ahead, we have the increase in national insurance contributions. And also, as we touched on with Neil there, we've got the energy price cap that's going to be lifted. So we're going to see lots of families struggle with the price of their energy this winter.
Yes, Ellie, look, thank you very much for bringing us that report. Ellie Costello there, of course. And it is that cost of living. When the cost of living gets unmanageable, and I don't think it's too far off from it, it certainly is unmanageable for a lot of people already. At what point does that goodwill run out and we just
it's being called the year of the big squeeze, isn't it? So that won't be music to many people's ears who are already very much struggling with their bills. But let's hope the government does something about it, at least. So there you go.
Well, anyway, there we go. Well, we're just going to move away from that now. Something a little bit lighter or different, I suppose. Anyway, January sees many of us vowing to give up a bad habit, using the hope of the new year to try new things. Have you got a New Year's resolution?
No.
Right. Well, there we go. I think so.
No, I just don't bother, you know, because I'm not sure I've ever kept one in anyway. So because I have very little willpower. Yeah, exactly.
It's a long time.
Exactly. So
I'm thinking of giving up the old smoking.
Are you?
Yeah.
How do you think that's? Thinking of it, so.
Well, I mean, I've got some right here at the moment, but I think I am. Other brands are available.
Yeah, having a few in the break, weren't you?
Well, yeah, but so it's my birthday coming up, and I'm thinking, maybe after that I'll stop.
And then it will be another. You'll be moving the goalposts until December the 30th.
I will, like a government COVID policy. Yes. But anyway, so Veganuary is one, like Dry January. It's another example, of course, of where typically non-vegans try to stick to a vegan diet just over January anyway, and businesses are taking advantage of this, aren't we?
Yes, well, we've seen the vegan sausage roll, the McPlant burger from McDonald's, which I believe they have now rolled out in all stores as a permanent feature. But now Baby Bell is the latest victim, I want to say. The latest victim of veganism. It's gone green for Veganuary, releasing a plant-based version of its iconic cheese snack, probably for good reason, because the global vegan cheese market was worth over £1.5 billion in 2020. Have you tried vegan cheese? Because I don't want to.
No,
I
had an ex who desperately tried to make me turn vegan, and well, she's an ex. But one thing I've never understood as well was about how when you get like vegan steak or vegan bacon, why they try to make it look so much like a dead animal if they're against it. So, the vegan, look, when you cut this steak open, it looks like blood comes out of it. Isn't that why you're a vegan?
Well, we all know it's because, even vegans lust over steak, surely. I don't believe anybody can look at a steak and not secretly dribble,
Yeah, well,
so it's because they know steak is elite. It's the elite food stuff.
Steaks, the one. Anyway, right, moving away. Novak Djokovic has had his visa revoked by the Australian government, and a letter has been issued for his deportation. Goodness me, it's kicked off over there, hasn't it? The world number one was held at Melbourne Airport for several hours, with the Australian Border Force confirming that he failed to provide appropriate evidence to meet the country's entry requirements.
Yes, well, Djokovic has refused to reveal whether he's had a COVID vaccine. So many people are saying, hang on, well, it's split, isn't it? Because some people, especially those in Australia, who, let's be honest, have had major restrictions trying to, with their government trying to sort of get rid of COVID. They're not even trying to live with COVID, it would seem, in Australia. Will say, well, hang on, if we've had to obey by the rules, why should this millionaire sports person, why should it be different for this millionaire sports person? But some are saying it's a bad decision. I mean, he is world number one, isn't he? And so some people are criticising Scott Morrison for this.
Well, I think Australia's just done a terrible job of PR on itself, hasn't it, really? It's now, as well, when you rope in Novak into this as well, it goes even more global than their draconian rules perhaps were already. And I think it advertises to the world, doesn't it, an element of how much or potentially otherwise this country particularly cares about freedoms and essentially mandating vaccines, isn't it? I mean, it's probably a bit rubbish. It's a strange one, isn't it? I think we've spoken about it before. Australia kind of used to be the place that I'd imagine my bolt hole would be if it all went to pot. Go over to Australia. It's nice and chilled out in Australia.
There are many countries which have until now really been seen as pillars of Western democracy, which are now seeming to be turning to authoritarianism, or they have done across the pandemic. And New Zealand and Australia are certainly two of those countries for that.
Absolutely. So a lot of you have been getting in touch. We'll go to those views shortly. GBviews at gbnews.uk. I'd rather have roast lamoury instead of veganuary. That's from Tony. There's a lot of this coming in. Keep it coming in, people. GBviews at gbnews.uk. And we'll be back shortly with more of the day's top stories. And yes, plenty of those views. Veganuary has certainly got you all very hot under the collar.
Yes, let's give you the weather before that.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. A cold one out there today. A wet day for most as well. Rain for the majority, but there is some snow falling over the hills across northern England and Scotland, courtesy of a deep area of low pressure just to the west of Iceland. These weather fronts bringing the moisture, hitting the cold air. It was a frosty start for most of us this morning. And as that wet weather hits the cold air, we will see a continued risk of snow, certainly for the next few hours over the higher routes through the Pennines, across the southern uplands and into the mountains of Scotland further north. There will be some snow on the higher routes, so say the A9, for example. Not lasting too long, but not very pleasant travelling out there. A wet day for most, but staying largely dry across East Anglia and the southeast until this evening. Feeling pretty cold out there, even though later on temperatures could get up to 8 or 9 across the southwest. The rain reaches East Anglia and the southeast before scooting away through the evening, and then showers come into the northwest. Again, mostly rain at low levels, but some heavy snow is likely over relatively small hills across the northwestern quarter of the UK, and likely to be quite icy as well as temperatures drop close to freezing in towns and cities, a little below in rural areas. But still a potential for heavy snow showers and ice across western Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England in the morning. So just something to be aware of. Some travel disruption certainly possible here. Rain mostly across Wales and southwest England, but some snow mixed in here for a time as well. Again, chiefly over the hills. Some sunny spells on Friday, but temperatures back closer to just 3 or 4 Celsius for most of us and feeling colder with the wind, and certainly when the showers come along. Staying pretty showery during Friday evening, so again as temperatures drop sharply, we could see some icy conditions for a time, and then out west we've got another set of weather fronts which will bring most places a wet spell during Saturday with some strong winds. Sunday does look drier and brighter at this stage.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News. We're on TV and we're on the radio now as well, so make sure that you check that out. It's Patrick Christie's and it's Mercy Muroki, and of course, it's just gone 11 a.m. And we're talking this morning about the Home Secretary's Nationality and Borders Bill, which is tricky for me to say, apparently. Buy now, pay later as well. And wearing religious symbols in the workplace. I think you're going to enjoy that one.
Yes, we'll even be discussing vegan baby bells, which we were just talking about not long ago. And you've got your views coming in on this as well.
Yeah.
Keep those coming in. We're also going to be talking about a big cat that's been sighted in Britain. We've got that and much more over the next hour. So get in touch with your views, as usual, on gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, the latest news.
A very good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. It's 11 o'clock. Let's get you up to date with the latest news. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has suggested plans to raise national insurance will go ahead. That's despite calls to scrap the move. The Commons leader, Jacob Rees-Mogg, argues the increase can't be justified as families are struggling with surging food and energy costs. From April, national insurance will rise by 1.25%. The policy was announced in September to help the NHS during the pandemic and to fund the cost of social care.
We think it's absolutely right that we do two things. One, clear up the very big backlog of operations and procedures that haven't been able to take place because the NHS has been so remarkably dealing with coronavirus. And two, make sure that we deal with the long-term problem of social care, and we're doing it through a rise in national insurance. That's the decision that we've made. We think we're making an important historic point here.
A gay rights activist says the core issues did not get fairly analysed after the European Court of Human Rights ruled his case inadmissible. Gareth Lee had claimed he was discriminated against when the Christian owners of a bakery refused to make him a cake with the slogan "Support Gay Marriage" in 2014. He'd appealed to the European Court after the UK Supreme Court ruled against him. The European Court decision is final. However, Mr Lee's lawyers say they may bring a fresh court challenge under domestic law. The director of the Evangelical Alliance, Peter Linus, has welcomed the ruling.
It comes down to, can you force somebody against their political, religious conscience for any reason? Can you force somebody to print a message they disagree with? And the court said, no, you can't. For anybody, you can't force anybody against their will. And the European Court has now agreed with that. And I think that's ultimately a good decision, actually, for everybody. It's never been about Christians against the LGBT community.
Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers are seeking a retrial after a juror told the media he was a victim of sexual abuse. Well, the defence says his disclosures influenced the deliberations and convinced other members of the jury to convict Maxwell after some initial doubts of her accusers. She was found guilty of grooming underage girls to be abused by Jeffrey Epstein last week. Meanwhile, lawyers in Prince Andrew's civil sex abuse case are still waiting for the judge to decide if it will be dismissed. Novak Djokovic's bid to have his visa cancellation overturned will be heard in an Australian court on Monday. The Serbian tennis player, who's hoping to defend his Grand Slam title, was told by border officials he did not meet entry rules and would be deported. The country's Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said his proof of exemption wasn't valid.
Rules are rules. And there are no special cases. Rules are rules. It's what I said to you yesterday. That's the policy of the government. Entry with a visa requires double vaccination or a medical exemption. I'm advised that such an exemption was not in place, and as a result, he is subject to the same rule as anyone else.
President Joe Biden is expected to tell Americans on the anniversary of the deadly Capitol riot that his predecessor, Donald Trump, carries singular responsibility for the attack. 4 people died on January the 6th last year, and 1 Capitol police officer died the day after defending Congress. The former strategic advisor to Donald Trump, Sebastian Gorka, told us that a second presidential bid for Donald Trump is likely.
He's running, I can assure you of that. He will be running, and God willing, if we can stop election fraud, he'll be back in the White House for 2024. You're going to see the same old man who came here to break China in the swamp and to fix the swamp. The swamp is full of swamp creatures, of vested interests, of lobby groups. He came here to drain it of those vested interests and to represent Americans. So no, I don't think Donald Trump is changing in his 70s.
North Korea claims it successfully fired a hypersonic missile which precisely hit its target 430 miles away. Yesterday's launch was the second test since October as the country works to bolster its military capabilities. Hypersonic weapons are harder to detect, usually flying at lower altitudes than ballistic missiles, and they can achieve a pace of more than 5 times the speed of sound. Now, details of the 1921 census have been released, and they reveal an insight into life at Windsor Castle. King George V's handwritten entry shows he was joined at the time by more than 200 other people, including his wife, Queen Mary, 4 of his 6 children, and over 150 people listed as servants and 40 visitors, including King Alfonso XIII of Spain. It is 6 minutes past 11. You are up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with your headlines at 5:30. Right now, back to the point.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki. We've got a show full of all of the biggest stories and loads to get stuck into, so here's what's coming up.
Yes, should we be punished or judged for wearing a religious symbol? Well, one woman was taken to court for wearing a cross necklace at work. We'll be hearing about how she came very close to losing her job and how she's been vindicated by a judge.
Yeah, absolute madness. But anyway, we'll be discussing the possible dangers of buy now, pay later schemes, as this way of paying for our shopping seems to be a huge boom. But buy now, pay later has also been heavily criticised for pushing some people into debt. We'll be talking about all the pros and cons of these schemes.
Yes, and is there a dangerous big cat in Devon? Well, there's been reported sightings, and we'll be speaking to a big cat expert shortly to get all the ins and outs of that story.
Yes, absolutely. I've got loads of anecdotes about that. When I was a local reporter, my boss, I won't name him on national television, Mike, he always used to have a big cat file. About once a month.
A big cat what?
File. Yeah, like a file.
Right.
And about once a month, I'll get stuck into it later, but once a month we'd walk into the office and he'd go, Patrick, big cat's back, and end up going and talking to Doreen about next door's Tabby, you know what I mean? But anyway, there we go. All that coming up and much, much more across the programme, and you can get in touch as usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on the left weaponising nationality and the Borders Bill, of course, to scaremonger.
Prominent Labour peer Lord Woolley has said that Priti Patel's Nationality and Borders Bill will make black and Asian Brits, like him, second-class citizens. Why? Because under Clause 9 of the bill, those who are eligible for citizenship of another country can have their citizenship revoked without being served a notification. The bill in its entirety is aimed at 1, deterring illegal immigration, 2, making it easier to remove those who have no right to be in the UK to be removed from the UK, and 3, more effectively dealing with those in genuine need of asylum. But I'm staggered at the level of scaremongering that is being peddled when it comes to what this Clause 9 of the bill does. In December, a so-called explainer in the New Statesman, in the popular political magazine, claimed this, and I quote word for word, 6 million people could be stripped of citizenship. These calculations were based on the number of people in the UK who are eligible for foreign citizenship. Then came the flood of hysterical doomsday claims that ordinary law-abiding Brits like me could be deported at Priti Patel's whims. One lawyer proclaimed in the papers that the policy was, quote, dangling a sword over the head of 6 million people. Now, I think it's important to get some facts straight when it comes to Clause 9. Under the current law, the Home Secretary can only revoke someone's British citizenship for 2 reasons, and 2 reasons only. Firstly, if it's deemed conducive to the public good because, for example, the person has committed acts of terrorism or war crimes. The second and last reason someone can have their citizenship revoked is if the person fraudulently obtained their citizenship, so were never entitled to it in the first place. Now, Clause 9 does not change any of this. I repeat, Clause 9 does not change this. It doesn't add to the very short list of reasons, legitimate reasons, people can be stripped of British citizenship. In other words, unless you plan on committing fraud, being a terrorist or a war criminal, you still don't need to worry about having your citizenship revoked under these proposals. What the bill does do is change the laws around notifying people about having their citizenship stripped. It gives the Home Office the power to take away citizenship without having notified someone only in cases where it's not possible or safe to do so. Basically, in the most exceptional circumstances. For example, this could be because the person is currently in a war zone, or because notifying them would reveal sensitive intelligence sources or compromise national security. And people still have the right to appeal this decision. So the decision isn't necessarily even final. Despite what the bill's opponents want you to believe, this is not some blanket attempt to kick out 6 million foreign Brits. It does not put ordinary law-abiding Brits at any more risk than they already are in of having their citizenship revoked. And in any case, we're talking about tiny numbers of people who even fall foul of these rules. From 2010 to 2018, on average, only 19 people were deprived of their British citizenship for public good reasons, like terrorist-related reasons. And from 2012 to 2019, an average of 30 people had their citizenship deprived on the grounds of fraud. As far as I'm concerned, the thing Clause 9 does is make it less complicated to remove citizenship from the minuscule proportion of people who deserve to have their citizenship revoked. I am one of these supposed 6 million people who could have my British citizenship revoked. I wasn't born in this country and I only became a British citizen as a child. But I will still sleep very well at night if and when Clause 9 comes into force, because I'm not a fraudster or an organised crime lord or a terrorist or a war criminal, and only those who are need to worry about Clause 9 of the Nationality and Borders Bill.
Right, well, yes, no, look, it's interesting stuff, absolutely, isn't it? And I did like that bit, especially where you were like, well, look, unless you want to commit fraud, be a war criminal or a terrorist, then basically...
Well, yeah, that's basically it. I hate this idea, you know, as I mentioned there, there's been these headlines in the press, and repeatedly over the last few months, where it's saying sort of 6 million Brits could have their citizenship revoked. Well, 6 million Brits, the last time I checked, are not terrorists, war criminals, you know, leaders of crime gangs, or fraudulently getting their citizenship.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I do suppose that there is a question mark there, isn't there, about the accuracy there of the government. I mean, they've not had a great track record when it comes to things like Windrush, etc. So if it leaves open at least the possibility that people might just fall foul of it by mistake, I suppose there's that. But yeah, I mean, realistically, you know, it's not.
Yeah, I think the safeguards are in place to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen. As I mentioned, you can still, there does have to be a whole legal process for this thing. You can appeal even if the government say they're going to. So, you know, there's still all those legal safeguards there to protect people in those sorts of cases.
Absolutely. Well, joining us now is Henry Bolton, borders expert and former leader of UKIP. I understand Henry is with us now. So, Henry, what do you make of... Hello, there he is. What do you make, Henry, of this particular nationalism and borders bill?
Well, I don't know why you've got me on here to talk about that, Patrick. Mercy's just summed up one very important part of it extremely well. So I'm out of a job now. It is in many ways a reasonable piece of legislation. My biggest problem with it is that there are a number of gaps. And those gaps are not because people just sort of deliberately left something out. It's because, unfortunately, the government has put legislation before the strategy and the plan. What should happen when you're sort of trying to sort out a nation's borders, its procedures, its structures, its operating procedures, and its powers and everything else, is that you should figure out what it is you're trying to achieve. You should figure out how you want to achieve that, who's going to do it, which agencies, and so on, what structures you need. And then you look at the legislation that exists and you say, does that legislation that exists now enable us to do what we need to do to secure and manage our borders properly? If the answer is yes, then fine. If the answer is no, then you look at what you need to change in that legislation, what additional powers you need, what you need to amend, and so on. And that's when you draft the legislation. What the Home Office has done is put the cart before the horse, which is it's a very European Union way of doing it. In the European Union, where they have codified law, that goes all the way back to the Napoleonic era. The legislation side of things, the legal side of the legislation, the law drafting, was actually the planning. It's a very different system, and it's not as effective and not as efficient. So in a sort of military planning context, if you were planning a military operation, you wouldn't start with what powers do we have. You'd start with what are the objectives and how do we deliver on those. Same thing here. So that's the problem with this. That, as a result, there are gaps. I know for a fact that some of the agencies involved that are going to be responsible for implementing the powers and so on, or carrying out the actions that this legislation empowers, are sitting there and going, well, hang on, that's all well and good, but we don't have the structures, we don't have the resources, we're not organised in the right way. Where's the plan? So when this bill is passed, and at the moment it's coming up for its third reading in the House of Lords, so we're not too far away from it being passed. When it's passed, it's not going to be implemented overnight because none of the rest of the system is aligned to do so. But one final point, just on that, it's not a standalone. Sorry?
Cap it all off. Cap it all off for us. Just finish it off for us then. Go on, because you've done a fantastic job of summarising it all.
Okay, all right. Well, there's two other bits of two other papers, shall we say. There's something called the 2025 UK Border Strategy and the Plan for Immigration. But in effect, Patrick, if I'm going to score what's in the pipeline out of 10 in terms of securing our borders, particularly in the Channel, I would probably put it at around about 6. Now, that's not bad because actually most of what the government's doing is settling around 2 or 3 in my books. So it's not too bad, but I want our borders properly secured. And to do that, there's a whole lot missing. There's 40-50% of what needs to be done that the Home Office and the government is not addressing yet. And that's what I'm focused on trying to, at the moment, I'm drafting some papers and so on, which hopefully I'll be able to present maybe on GB News later this month to fill that 40%.
Okay. Good stuff. Henry, thank you very much. Expertly done there. A man who really knows his way around a border. Not quite literally there. I'll have to put them up instead. Henry Bolton there, of course, former leader of UKIP and indeed border expert. Right, after the break, we'll be looking at the case of, get this, ladies and gentlemen, a devout Catholic woman who was pushed out of her job for wearing a cross at work. It's madness. But anyway, first, time for the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. A cold one out there today. A wet day for most as well. Rain for the majority, but there is some snow falling over the hills across northern England and Scotland, courtesy of a deep area of low pressure just to the west of Iceland. These weather fronts bringing the moisture, hitting the cold air. It was a frosty start for most of us this morning. And as that wet weather hits the cold air, we will see a continued risk of snow, certainly for the next few hours over the higher routes through the Pennines, across the southern uplands and into the mountains of Scotland further north. There will be some snow on the higher routes, so say the A9, for example. Not lasting too long, but not very pleasant travelling out there. A wet day for most, but staying largely dry across East Anglia and the southeast until this evening. Feeling pretty cold out there, even though later on temperatures could get up to 8 or 9 across the southwest. The rain reaches East Anglia and the southeast before scooting away through the evening, and then showers come into the northwest. Again, mostly rain at low levels, but some heavy snow is likely over relatively small hills across the northwestern quarter of the UK, and likely to be quite icy as well as temperatures drop close to freezing in towns and cities, a little below in rural areas. But still a potential for heavy snow showers and ice across western Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England in the morning. So just something to be aware of. Some travel disruption certainly possible here. Rain mostly across Wales and southwest England, but some snow mixed in here for a time as well. Again, chiefly over the hills. Some sunny spells on Friday, but temperatures back closer to just 3 or 4 Celsius for most of us and feeling colder with the wind, and certainly when the showers come along. Staying pretty showery during Friday evening, so again, as temperatures drop sharply, we could see some icy conditions for a time. And then out west, we've got another set of weather fronts which will bring most places a wet spell during Saturday with some strong winds. Sunday does look drier and brighter at this stage.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News home and security editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Good morning, it's 11:23 and you're here with To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Patrick Christys. Now, a Catholic nurse who was pushed out of her job for wearing a cross around her neck was unfairly dismissed by the hospital where she worked, an employment tribunal has ruled. Theatre practitioner Mary Onuowa claimed that she had faced a campaign of harassment by bosses at Croydon University Hospital, a place she'd worked for 18 years.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the panel ruled that she was forced to quit her role after her employers created an offensive and hostile and intimidating environment. It's absolutely shocking stuff, this one. With us now is Caroline Farrow, who is the UK and Ireland's campaign director at Citizen Go, which is a group who look to defend and promote the participation of society in politics, and certainly as well when it comes to things exactly like this. Caroline, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. What do you make of this ruling?
It's fabulous, and congratulations to Mary and to the team at Christian Concern who brought this. And I think, although it is fabulous and every single Christian can now, wear the cross, wear the symbol of our faith around their necks at work, but it is horrific that she had to go through such an ordeal in the first place. Nobody should be forced to choose between doing the job that they love, and working in the medical profession is a vocation, and their faith. The two things are not incompatible. And you can see just how petty the rule was, in that this lady complained, rightly so, that people of other faiths and religions, they weren't discriminated against. And in fact, they're allowed to wear their lanyards. The policy of lanyard wearing was allowed, but not a little cross around your neck.
Do you think there's actually potentially anti-Christianity in the workplace? Is that maybe what this is? Or is it just idiocy?
I think it's both, actually. I think it's a kind of adherence, it's a blind adherence to bureaucracy, and we cannot be seen to be giving anybody any special treatment. I think there is an actual antipathy to Christianity. I think particularly, native Brits feel more confident about kind of rejecting Christianity, which is, we are a country with a Judeo-Christian heritage. And so people feel more confidence of rejecting their own heritage rather than rejecting anybody else's heritage. So, we don't see we do see examples of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, which are abhorrent. But we don't see these workplace discrimination cases in quite the same way. So nobody would dream of, telling a Muslim to remove, their head covering. Nobody would dream of telling another faith not to do this. And it's always Christians who are targeted. And I think it's because people feel empowered. They don't feel like they're being in any way discriminatory when in fact they are.
Yeah, do you think though there is some, I mean, obviously the tribunal ruled she was unfairly dismissed, but do you think it is in a workplace setting, in a hospital setting where you are treating patients, the reason some managers might get a bit uneasy is because you might try and impart your religion on the people who are ill, and they get a bit nervous about the sorts of things you might be telling vulnerable people when it comes to religion. Do you think there's a bit of that going on?
I think absolutely, and I think we have seen cases like this where people have been, disciplined and lost their jobs because they've said to patients, may I pray with you? But in fact, showing a cross, showing a symbol of your religion is no worse than, wearing a political symbol, which the NHS staff are encouraged to do all the time, with their rainbow lanyards and their various, sort of trans badges and whatever else. And I think actually wearing a sign of a faith is in a completely different category to wearing a sort of political symbol. And I think doing that is wearing a symbol of your faith and talking about your faith is fine as long as you respect boundaries and you don't proselytize. So I think it's absolutely fine for a Christian to say to somebody, look, I'm a Christian, do you mind if I pray for you? And that can open up a helpful conversation, same as if someone else says, I'm a Jew, I'm a Muslim, may I, pray for you in that way? Personally, I'd be honoured and flattered. But then if a patient says to you, I think that's a load of rubbish and I don't believe in all of that, please don't, then you have to respect their boundaries and not try and proselytize. So, yeah, it's absolutely fine, and it can be, spiritually helpful and emotionally helpful and psychologically helpful to be able to talk about your faith and share your faith. But you must be very careful to do it in a way that doesn't impose and doesn't, cause offence. And of course, I would also say, even though I have very strong views on, say, Orthodox Christianity, you must be very careful, I think, about trying to impose your own ethics on others. So, there are areas that's not appropriate to talk about.
Absolutely, no, 100%. I think so. And as well, I wonder how many of those pictures came out, of nurses taking the knee or doctors taking the knee when it was all kicking off, and all this stuff. Like you said, the rainbow lanyards, going outside and clapping for them, bumper stickers, honk for the NHS, all this stuff. And then you get someone there who's a devout Christian and they want to wear a cross around the neck. Let's be honest, there would have been riots, wouldn't there, if this had been, potentially a different religion and someone had been asked to remove a burqa or something like that, or something like that. There would have been riots.
And the other thing is so, recently, I think you covered there was a doctor who was suspended from his role as a GP for abusing, women on social media, Dr. Adrian Harrop. And one of the things that he did was he wasn't disciplined for this, but he wore his rainbow lanyard and he had on it a little badge saying anti-turf spray, which meant that, basically he wanted to repel people who had different views on gender ideology to him. And that's the GP. And I once made the comment that I would be very nervous now going to my GP and seeing all this kind of rainbow ideology, transgender badges, etc., because instantly the doctor is signalling to me what they think on a particular contentious, difficult issue, which is entirely different to, I believe in Jesus Christ, my Lord and Saviour. So the two things, I think political symbols, no. Faith symbols, absolutely, yes.
Well, Carolyn Farrow, thank you for joining us on that important story there, because it does set a very a good precedent for lots of people who might be faced with a similar situation. Although you could argue that she mentioned there about if she went to see a doctor and they were wearing a lanyard, it would make her feel a bit uneasy because it would signal to them their views. You could argue the same for wearing a cross, and if you're a devout Catholic, obviously you don't, or the vast majority don't believe in gay marriage, or they believe being gay is a sin. So if they're treating a gay patient could say, well, you're signalling to me that, you know, you think I'm a sinful person. So there is lots of grey areas, I think, as well.
Excuse me, yes. Well, no, I agree. I think let's just leave religion alone, shall we, everyone? But anyway, there we go. Right, we're going to delve into the inbox now. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Thank you very much, everyone who's been getting in touch. A new word. This is from Paddy. Hey, good name. Saying Christophobic should be anti-Christian. Word for anti-Christian. It probably is a word for that, to be fair. But yes, there we go.
So we've had who's this? I've lost the name completely, but somebody got in touch earlier and saying what you were saying, actually, that if it was a Muslim woman who was asked to take her burqa off, then it would be completely different and people would be outraged. Lots of people saying they'll be celebrating veganuary by going to their local pub and eating a steak as well.
Well, we've had some influence, at least.
Well, Nicholas says he's had 2 fillet steaks for breakfast this morning. If someone is going vegan for January, he'll happily take theirs too. Keep supporting farmers.
Yes, well, that's it as well. We've got a big farming industry, haven't we? And yes, I think we need to. It needs all the support that it can. Needs all the support that it can get. I think we've got loads of people as well getting in touch to say where they're watching from around the world. And remember as well, we are of course on radio right now. I'm sure loads of you will be listening on that. We've had Dale in Germany, and I've lost the name on this one, but we're also big in South Africa apparently.
Really?
Big in
South
South
I never.
Well, there you go.
People have been getting in touch about the issue of Blair getting a knighthood. You did a monologue, expressed some very strong views at the earlier. You did. I mean, that's not debatable. But Rob here says, if Blair thought there was a chance that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, what did you want him to do? Nothing. He's pointing out the fact that he was sort of stuck. He had to make that.
Well, it's one of the things that the Chilcot report came out and said, which actually a policy of containment would have been a lot more effective than what happened there, and that apparently North Korea, Iran and indeed Libya were deemed at much more of a higher risk of having weapons of mass destruction than Saddam Hussein. So I think it's that question of whether or not military intervention led him by the nose by George Bush was really the right answer.
And after the break, we're going to be talking about a story that's very close to your heart, isn't it? He loves this. The legendary great beast of Exmoor has been spotted again, but is it just a large cat? Well, we'll find out more after a look at this morning's news with Rosie.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. Here are the latest headlines at 11:33. A female paramedic has died after a crash between an ambulance and a cement truck. South East Coast Ambulance Service says the collision happened near Tonbridge in Kent last night. Another paramedic suffered serious injuries and a lorry driver suffered minor injuries. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has suggested plans to raise national insurance will go ahead, despite calls to scrap the move. The Commons leader Jacob Rees-Mogg argues the increase can't be justified as families struggle with surging food and energy costs. From April, national insurance will rise by 1.25% to fund the NHS and social care. A gay rights activist who claims he was discriminated against in a cake baking row has been told his case is inadmissible by the European Court of Human Rights. Gareth Lee is now considering whether to bring a fresh court challenge under domestic law. He says he's frustrated that the core issues weren't fairly analysed by the European Court. Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers are seeking a retrial after a juror in the case told the media he was the victim of sexual abuse. Well, the defence says his disclosures influenced the deliberations and convinced other members of the jury to convict Maxwell. She was found guilty of grooming underage girls to be abused by Jeffrey Epstein last week. Novak Djokovic's bid to have his visa cancellation overturned will be heard in an Australian court on Monday. The Serbian tennis player is hoping to defend his Grand Slam title, was told by border officials he didn't meet entry rules and would be deported. You are right up to date at 11:35. I'll be back with more on all of today's top stories at 12 o'clock.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Morning all, it's 11:37 and you're watching us on the telly, or of course now you can listen to us on the radio as well. Now, a watchdog is warning that stronger safeguards are needed to buy now, pay later products because apparently consumers, easy for me to say, have not been well protected. So consumer organisation Which said that policies such as affordability checks and making small print more accessible are needed right now.
Yes, well, buy now, pay later schemes let shoppers delay payment for an item with no interest or charges. That's, of course, unless they fail to pay it back on time. While joining us now is Helen Dewdney, who is an author and consumer expert at The Complaining Cow. Welcome, Helen. Can you just walk us through some of the issues with buy now, pay later? Because lots of people are turning to them, particularly people who don't have a lot of money. They see them as a lifeline. It's the scheme really helps them pay for items they wouldn't otherwise be able to pay for.
Yeah, I think that some of the issues are that it's at the moment it's not regulated, or there is a consultation that closes today. So at the moment, the buy now, pay it later schemes are mostly not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. You can't go to the Financial Ombudsman. You're not covered by Section 75, although we're hoping that some of these things will change after the government consultation. But it gives the feeling sort of people that they can buy these things and then they forget to pay, or that they don't make a payment and then they end up having to pay a lot more. It gives people a false sense of security. And so we are seeing a lot of people going into debt and more debt because of these issues with the buy it now, pay later schemes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you think they deliberately target vulnerable people with these or not? Because some people might say, hey, look, people roughly speaking, loosely speaking, must know what they're getting into. Are they vulnerable people who are getting involved in this?
We are certainly seeing vulnerable people getting caught because it tends to be vulnerable people who, are going into debt by the very nature. So it is definitely an issue because at the moment they're not necessarily explaining all the ways that you have to pay and all the things that could happen if you don't pay. So it's difficult to say whether they're deliberately targeting, but it's certainly what we're seeing is happening, that vulnerable people are getting caught and being trapped by these payment schemes.
Any credit options that you ever would recommend to somebody on a low income who is struggling to pay for things outright? Because some of these credit cards, for people who potentially don't have good credit, have massive interest on them, for example, and you still get these catalogue sort of shops where you have to pay massive amounts of interest on household items. So buy now, pay later almost seems like the lesser of many evils.
And it can be if it's used well. You know, if you know that you've got a big expenditure this month, but you know that you can plan out for the next 3 months, 6 months, however long the plan is, it can work, but you need to be very organised and make sure that, you know, you are going to be able to make those payments. And certainly if people are in debt, there is help out there. There's citizens' advice. There's, you know, various websites that you can go to, like Debt Camel, and, you know, all these kinds of sites that are there to help you in debt. Step Change, certainly. So if you feel that you're going into debt or you are in debt, these organisations can help you get yourself back on track and find out how you can start paying things back and how you can continue to live, really.
No, indeed. And it is a massively, massively real problem for huge numbers of people, really, isn't it? And it's just an incredibly tricky situation because I imagine it can spiral, can't it? It snowballs, and before you know it, you know, you are banging trouble, aren't you?
Well, that's the trouble, because if you miss one payment, you might end up having to pay interest. Because although you can make it work, it can be brilliant because you're not paying any interest. Well, but if you make a late payment, you could be paying a late payment fee. You could be paying extra interest from, even if you've sort of only defaulted on month 10, you might have to pay it for month 1. So it can spiral, particularly if you haven't looked at all the, you know, the detailed terms and conditions of the contract that you're entering into.
No, absolutely. Obviously, without naming any names or anything like that, of course, keeping everyone completely confidential. Can you maybe just give me some of the details of one of the worst cases that you've seen here, really?
I think, well, it's, you know, it is difficult, sort of, obviously, it's much easier to generalise that people are forgetting to make payments or that they haven't budgeted. So they feel that, you know, that, oh, that's okay, I'll pay next month, I can do that, and then not pay the following month and then get more into trouble. So we are seeing the spiral effect, and that's happening more and more.
Well, here we go. We've had a couple of people get in touch already on this. It's fair to say we've had a range of views. Sam from Cheshire, near my neck of the woods, that originally says, I use these and I'm fully aware. I know that payments need to be made. If people miss them, they suffer the consequences. Take responsibility for your own actions. Sam. Yes. Sam.
Well, Ian has a completely different view. I don't think people realise what it's like when you're living on the breadline. Actually, his view, I suppose, is... he says you can't use a buy now, pay later scheme. What are you meant to do if you can't use one? So there's quite a lot of support, I think, for people who otherwise wouldn't have any other options to turn to. But Helen, thank you so much for coming on and discussing that with us. Helen Deebney, their author and consumer expert. So keep your views coming in and we can go to some of those now.
Yeah, cool. Christopher's got an interesting one on this. You know, personally, I quite regularly use... I won't name the brand. Because I don't know about them, but you know, for buy now, pay later, and he really likes it, right? And he says, but I keep a tight rein on things, but I do have to admit it can make me more likely to make a purchase I might not have made.
Yes, that's the problem as well, isn't it? Because it's very easy. I've used one of these schemes before, and it's very easy to just click buy now, pay later, and you sort of forget about it because it doesn't come up on you don't have a notification coming up on your banking app that you've just made this purchase. Alistair here says all problems are listed there in terms of problems with buy now, pay later are down to carelessness, but those who have a steady income, it's a way of relieving financial pressure. So support from Alistair for buy now, pay later there.
Absolutely. Now, Malcolm has been in touch. I love it, Malcolm. I'm going to try and get someone to sort this out in the next break and get this picture on the screen. We're going to be talking about the big beast of Exmoor later. And by that, I mean the big cat that inevitably, and I think we all know very definitely, patrols the British countryside. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to have a big cat expert on.
I thought you were going to say going to have a big cat in. I was like, I wasn't told about that.
That idea got vetoed, right? I wanted to have a big cat in. I wanted to have many big cats. I wanted them sat on the desk right here, you know. But yeah, apparently they said the Tiger King's still incarcerated, so we can't do that anymore. But anyway, yes, well, Malcolm sent a picture of his own very large cat in, which I do quite like. So maybe we could try and make this a thing now.
Looking at that picture on your
That's a
screen
massive
there,
cat.
Patrick, I am quite sceptical. That has to be photoshopped, surely. But we'll try and put it on. We'll try and put it on a bit later, and I guess our viewers can decide, and our listeners if they want to.
But I'm bang up for this, I must say. The walker in the gallery. I've just seen the picture in the inbox there, and I can hear them in my ear. So well done, Malcolm. You've made everyone laugh here at GB News. But so a walker in Devon, right, was left stunned after they came within yards of this legendary beast of Exmoor. So Sam Aston apparently spotted the black, long-tailed creature during a dog walk near Brayford, giving hope to the fact that they may be. Do you think they're out there? Do you think big cats are out there in this country?
Not well. I mean, in zoos and.
But in the wild, you know.
I mean, I don't think so. Surely.
Not even a lynx.
Maybe some big cat-style animals are out there, I would say.
Yeah, well, we're going to be getting a guest on this very, very shortly, so we'll return to that, ladies and gentlemen. But I absolutely love this. Yes. Anyway, right. So also, a commemorative coin has been unveiled by the Royal Mint, apparently ahead of Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee, so marking 70 years on the throne. What a reign it's been! It depicts the Queen on horseback and was designed by artist John Bergdahl, and it's the first collectible UK 50p piece to celebrate a royal event.
Incredibly gorgeous. It just looks lovely, doesn't it?
Nice
as well?
coin.
It is a very nice coin. You definitely wouldn't want to spend it, or I certainly wouldn't.
Solid coin. I find it a bit weird, though, sometimes, the idea that something with a monetary value, like a 50p, can be worth more than 50p.
Yeah, I suppose anything's worth how much somebody's willing to pay for it, isn't it? That's
true, actually, yes.
the old saying, isn't it?
Now, what do you guys make of this one as well? Novak Djokovic has had his visa revoked by the Australian government. I'm sure you've all heard of this. And a letter now has been issued in relation to his deportation. They want him down. They want him gone. His world number one, of course, was held at Melbourne Airport for several hours with the Australian Border Force confirming he'd failed to provide appropriate evidence to meet the country's entry requirements. Of course, he's refused to reveal whether or not he's had a COVID vaccine, and Australia has gone absolutely bonkers when it comes to the jabs.
Yeah, some people are somewhat split on this. Some people are saying it's sort of COVID regulations are gone mad, but others, especially those actually, I've heard several people across the day, across the morning, commenting about the fact that Australian citizens have had to abide by some of the strictest rules, really, in terms of COVID. And so there shouldn't be any exceptions or any special treatment for anybody else, even if they are this millionaire celebrity sports person.
Well, there's no, realistically, look, regardless of what your views on the Novak Djokovic situation are, and I know that plenty of people think the whole thing's nuts, right? You should just be allowed to go and play tennis. OK, fine. Regardless of all of that, to be fair, if you are the Australian Prime Minister and you've essentially shackled most of your citizens to your radiator for the last however long, frankly, there's no way you can let Novak rock up and play tennis if he's say that he's not been, well, if he doesn't look as though he's been jabbed. But of course, you just can't.
Apparently, they will be allowed to appeal, as I understand. So we'll see what happens with that. But either way, it's not really great look, is it, for Australia? But then some would say the rules are the rules. Everybody else has to abide by whatever rules are in place. So he has to as well.
I'm absolutely amazed, frankly, that basically the Australians have put up with it for as long as they have. I don't really see how I never thought in a million years Australians would have put up with the kind of draconian rules and regs.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like the idea, because I hear this a lot, people putting up with, how could they put up with these regulations, or how could they put up with this? I mean, people don't have much of a choice in terms of the things their governments put in place. I mean, yes, they can go out and protest against it, which we have seen lots of protests, haven't we, across Europe, across the world, against regulations. But this idea that it's almost, well, why are they putting up with it? I don't think they have much of a choice.
Yeah, that is fair. I did think I saw some massive protests in Germany last night, actually, and I thought it was fascinating because it did make me think, actually, look, regardless of whether or not you agree with there being strict rules, I suppose, and some of you will do and some of you won't, but there's actually a lot of people who are willing to go out right across Europe, right around the world, and protest and demonstrate. Now, even if you think that some of these people are wacky anti-vaxxers or whatever, something like that, or people who are a bit out there, actually, we need people like that in society, because it's only people who keep holding people's feet to the fire that sometimes stop it from going all the way, right?
Absolutely.
Whether or not you agree with them is one thing, but you need people who are at extremes to go out and protest for something.
Yeah, and sometimes it does seem that they're overblowing everything, because often people are protesting at the very early stages of regulations, and they're saying, well, it's just this, why don't you just put up with this, because it's not much of a fuss.
Exactly,
But then we know there is a slippery slope when it comes to things like regulations, don't we? And so sometimes, you give them an inch, they take a mile when it comes to governments, don't they? And so I do appreciate when people are out sort of protesting some of the early restrictions that governments try to bring in. I just want to mention quickly, before we get on to our next item, Malcolm's emailed in here about Novak Djokovic and him having his visa revoked in Australia. And he says, I understand that Novak has had his visa revoked. He'll have to use his MasterCard instead. Dad joke there. I liked it.
Thanks, mate. Yes. Okay.
I might use that one later.
Right, look, we've also had a lot of you get in touch about the big cat that definitely exists across the United Kingdom. There is a big cat out there. I've got one on my camera recorder that I filmed in 2004 in Kent, and that's just from someone who calls themselves, hey, where's the proof? Send it in. Get it in. Get it in. We also obviously had Malcolm get in touch about the big cat, the big beast of Exmoor, and says, Malcolm had this to say, he says, he hasn't been in for a few nights, but Tom is the giant cat on Exmoor.
Yeah.
And sent us this picture. Is that cat real?
He sent us a picture of him holding a huge, I mean, I don't think it's real, a huge cat the size of, bigger than his own torso, to be honest. That has to be photoshopped, I think. There's no way that a cat is that big.
It's like a Shetland pony. You could ride it. You could ride it across Exmoor.
No. I think there might be a reason Malcolm has cropped his face conveniently out of that picture, probably because it's not quite Malcolm, it's not quite a real cat.
No, absolutely. Well, there you go. That's definitely a big cat, that's for sure. But yes, so when I was working as a local reporter up in Cumbria, fabulous little local newspaper, the Westmoreland Gazette, good stuff, the Wessie Gazzy. I had a news editor there called Mike, who has a big cat file, right?
You need to explain firstly what a big cat file is.
So every time there was a case where someone had called in and reported that there would be, which was quite a lot actually, that they'd seen a big cat somewhere in the Cumbrian wilderness, then Mike would get his file out and just log it. And about once a month, right, with no shred of joking or anything like that at all, I'd get a phone call. I might get a phone call at 6 a.m, or it might be just in the office, doing something. Like, Patrick, big cat's back. Get out there and have a look. And I was like, what? Go out there and try and hunt it down. It's like, Mike, just to clarify, mate, you want me to drive to the woods and look for a cougar, right? Well, not a bad phrase. You want me to drive to the woods? There are people who do that. You want me to drive to the woods and look for a lynx, and And I was like, what do I do?
Did you actually do it?
I just drove to the woods. I was like, what do I do if I find a leopard in the woods? What am I supposed to do? Like tame it and bring it back?
And did you ever find anything? No.
Absolutely not. No, not Bear Grylls,
Well, thanks for that anecdote.
That's all right.
Well, look, Scoot says there is wild big cats out there. We read that one. He says he's got one on send us that for tomorrow. Send us that for tomorrow. Lots of you actually getting in touch about Novak Djokovic, and everyone has to follow the same rules, Kyle says, and the Australian citizens have had the strictest rules. He isn't special. Who's this? Alison says, well, when you've encouraged the police to rubber bullet your citizens, make them lose their jobs, and stop them going into supermarkets, they can't really make an exception. They've almost tied themselves into having to enforce these rules for everybody because they've been incredibly strict.
Well, this is it, isn't it, really? They have tied their hands there now. I do really wonder about the damage that Australia and New Zealand are going to do to themselves. I mean, the fact is, though, they are beautiful. They look like, I've never been, but they're like beautiful countries, and there's obviously huge amounts to do over there. And so I would imagine as and when, if ever, they decide to throw their borders open, then, all right, OK, maybe that they'll their tourism industry will boom again. But how can it with their current policy? Look at it now, zero COVID policy. Well, COVID's always going to exist. The vaccines that we have don't entirely stop you getting it or indeed passing it on. So the second that you decide that you want to reopen your borders, you're going to get another wave of COVID again. So what happens now? The Australian tourism industry just has to just sort of operate internally, do they?
Yeah, well, somebody has said Canada, New Zealand and Australia did used to be the most popular countries for emigrating. I was one, but very glad I didn't go. They have gone mad. That's from Laura. And that's very true, isn't it? That's what we were saying. They used to be some of the most respected Western liberal democracies, sort of beacons of civility. And now we are seeing what seems to be a lot of authoritarianism creeping in.
100%. And yes, a lot of love for Malcolm's massive cat that came in as well. People saying that they love a little bit of Malcolm. So there we go. Thank you very, very much. Right. And anyway, just one final story that we've got here. The Duchess of Sussex will receive apparently a total of £1 whole in damages from Associated Newspapers after the Mail on Sunday was found to have invaded her privacy. So the paper had published a handwritten letter that Meghan had sent to her father, Thomas Markle, in 2018, where she urged her daddy to stop colluding with the media and causing her emotional pain.
Yeah, and daddy's the word she used. That's not just you, sort of.
No, yes, sorry, yes, I didn't just,
Yes, the decision was not without controversy, as you can imagine. In November, the Sussex's former communications secretary said the Duchess had asked him to proofread her letter as she understood that it could be leaked, going as far as to call her dad, Daddy, as we were just saying there, so that in the unfortunate event that it would be leaked, it would pull at people's heartstrings. So basically saying there that Meghan did know that it would eventually be released. But as we say, the judge did rule in her favour and has awarded her some damages.
Yes, indeed. All right, well, look, thank you very much, everyone who's been watching this show. That's it from us here at To The Point. But don't go away. Up next, of course, we've got the wonderful Gloria Di Piero with the briefing. And I'll be back tomorrow, certainly. But for now, I suppose I'd maybe off to the Woodstock for a cougar.
Yes, indeed. And stay with us just for a little bit longer. We're going to bring you the weather and then Gloria.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. A cold one out there today. A wet day for most as well. Rain for the majority, but there is some snow falling over the hills across northern England and Scotland, courtesy of a deep area of low pressure just to the west of Iceland. These weather fronts bringing the moisture, hitting the cold air. It was a frosty start for most of us this morning. And as that wet weather hits the cold air, we will see a continued risk of snow, certainly for the next few hours over the higher routes through the Pennines, across the southern uplands and into the mountains of Scotland further north. There will be some snow on the higher routes, so say the A9, for example. Not lasting too long, but not very pleasant travelling out there. A wet day for most, but staying largely dry across East Anglia and the southeast until this evening. Feeling pretty cold out there, even though later on temperatures could get up to 8 or 9 across the southwest. The rain reaches East Anglia and the southeast before scooting away through the evening, and then showers come into the northwest. Again, mostly rain at low levels, but some heavy snow is likely over relatively small hills across the northwestern quarter of the UK, and likely to be quite icy as well as temperatures drop close to freezing in towns and cities, a little below in rural areas. But still a potential for heavy snow showers and ice across western Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England in the morning. So just something to be aware of. Some travel disruption certainly possible here. Rain mostly across Wales and southwest England, but some snow mixed in here for a time as well, again chiefly over the hills. Some sunny spells on Friday, but temperatures back closer to just 3 or 4 Celsius for most of us and feeling colder with the wind, and certainly when the showers come along. Staying pretty showery during Friday evening, so again as temperatures drop sharply, we could see some icy conditions for a time, and then out west